So here we are. It's June. Good to be back in the saddle. We have a small group today. Stephanie is out of the country, and we have a few other people who will be straggling. But um, besides the Musk and Trump dust up, what's going what's going on in this world? Yeah. So this has been a crazy month, I think, in some ways, just from my perspective, which is going to be maybe is somewhat different than yours in the spirit space and the wine space. But it seems like we've gotten to a bit more of a new normal, yet um, there's still more questions. In other words, I feel the return to buying. There are more people out finally making the moves that they've got to proceed and and lay down or commit to some barrels. The pricing has, I believe, reached bottom, and especially for new fill. And at the same time, I'm aware of a major inventory of mature barrels that are being released in an attempt to do it delicately, but at significantly below market prices, which is good and bad. It's bad if it really brings the price of everything else down, but it's good for for brands who really want to um, protect their cost of goods. These are crazy prices. So it's not all public, but we have been selling it, and that's all I'm going to say because this will be recording that goes out. But if anyone has needs, it won't show up on our list, but it's pretty significant. Anyway, with that, let's open with Dan. Dan Gallus, he's our insurance guru. Um, what's been going on? We talked about this before in terms of the changing valuations of whiskey stocks or aged barrels. What has that meant for you guys?
Well, that's yeah, interesting question. This just came up on a rather large allocation I'm working on for an investment company. For they've got a bunch of barrels, and we're trying. They ask all the time. They ask us, well, how do we value these? How do you guys value? How do the underwriters? And to this point, still, I've never had an underwriter or an auditor or anybody go out to a facility, a rick house, a distillery, and walk around and test the barrels or anything, even for an inspection for that matter. But the question now becomes with the barrel, you were just, I think, talking about the prices dropping. In the insurance world, there's a term called a moral hazard. And the idea there is, well, insurance is not meant to ever be a profit center. It's meant to indemnify. So if you lose something because of a covered cause of loss, you're made whole, indemnified. But if you've got a policy with 1,000 barrels and you value them at 2,000, you get paid out 2,000 per barrel, and then you turn around and buy the same thing at $1,000. That's the moral hazard because you're essentially profiting off of a loss. So we have had, I've started to have some questions from underwriters confirming barrel amounts, making sure that hey, do we have accurate information? They haven't yet started to ask for third party barrel or like whiskey valuation services reports or anything like that. I haven't gotten that, but I am starting to get some additional clarification questions so that
Mhm.
there's a clear uh, email stream in place in case there was to be a loss. The underwriters could go back and make a case one way or the other.
Mhm.
I'd
Yeah,
say
that's actually, I think there's going to be a little bit more of that because the fact is that there are barrels available now for half the price of what
mhm.
people would have paid 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And in some ways, it does make sense to get out of what you can get out of and replace it with something that costs a lot less. So,
So
I know it's moral hazard in your world, but in business, it's like that's business, right?
right, well, it, the moral hazard piece comes where a no one on this call or anyone that we work with, of course, but a less scrupulous person, a less moral person would maybe not take as much precaution with their rick house or warehouse,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
right? To prevent a fire, to prevent theft, making sure that the roof is inspected like it's supposed to be to prevent water damage or something like that.
Well, the reality is that not in all cases, but in most cases, especially when you're dealing with large inventories of investor-owned, those barrels are still at, not 100% of the time, but 90% of the time, they're at the original DSP, which are all established,
Mhm.
the MGPs, the Bardstowns, the Green Rivers. In fact, I had you said that you've never had an underwriter ask. I got a call about a month ago from an underwriter from one of our investor groups that holds barrels, and they wanted to know which warehouse. And then the next day, I got a call saying, "Can we send our person to your
Mhm.
warehouse?" I said, "Well, it's not my warehouse. You got to call,
Right.
in this case, it was Bardstown, and but they went and they did an inspection, which I was surprised because Bardstown is new, and it's obvious that they're not going to have, creaky, leaky roofs and creaky floors.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yes,
um,
my ask would be if anybody hasn't evaluated their total property limits, whether it's what's called BPP, business personal property, or if you have a barrel
mhm.
program or something like that, talk with whoever it is you work with and make sure that the values are updated. Because if you can make an argument that you should actually only be covering 75% of the total value of whatever you're at now, if you can reduce your coverage values, you're going to reduce your premiums, right?
Well, so I'll just be, transparent here. We had an opportunity to grab some barrels that were already filled, that were part of somebody's order or somebody's allocation that they paid a deposit for, but they never closed on them. So those barrels were put back on sale at a significant discount by the distiller because they just wanted to get their cost down. So they were under $500 a barrel.
Wow.
And when I was going through the insurance with even the warehouse insurance, because they charge by age, I said, wait, how do we value these? Because it isn't about covering for appreciation. It's really about getting, so they're only insured for $500 right now. Until they're older, we'll increase it. The insurance was like 40 cents, a barrel,
Sounds about right.
as opposed to, even for a year old stuff, it would be under a dollar.
Hmm.
But it was 40 cents. So, um, we'll increase that as we watch the values, but it was like, there's no need to insure this for the old values. I
No,
can go back and buy some more for that
yeah,
price.
if it's actually available at that, right. Yeah, the
Yeah,
problem becomes all if the market turns around and now those $1,000 new fill barrels are
right,
1250 and you've got thousands of barrels, well, now maybe you're underinsured by a vast amount.
right.
So it's just
Well,
keeping
yeah, it does require a little bit more diligence. But to your point, there's no real standard of values. So that's really something that I think I mean, I'm surprised it's not becoming a more universal third party analysis, that you rely on rather than,
uh,
I think they're worth this.
I imagine there's probably more of that on the financial side. If you're using the barrels as collateral,
Right.
then you're going to have the bank or the financing
Well,
institution.
there's banks that do those. Yeah, absolutely. But I'm, you know, it really matters more on the insurance side.
It
Um,
should.
yeah.
I'm not getting
Well,
the
as much.
request yet.
Yeah. All right. Well, enough about barrels, unless you guys want to talk about barrels. Um, Charlie, what's on your mind?
Well, it's been a while since I've been in here. I actually got accepted into the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program back in like January. I just graduated like 2 weeks ago. So,
Wow. Okay.
um, Yeah, but it was kind of cool because just a side note on barrels, like confirming from my side. So my company is called Americano, and we're a creative partner for craft liquor brands. So we handle a lot of our major clients do single barrel customized labels.
Yeah.
And like there's still a lot of barrels that are coming through, but you can tell that like the buyers are definitely more cautious rather than just being like, yeah, I'll take, 3 barrels or whatever. They're for some reason they're like slowing down a little bit, but
Well, they have, that's been the past 8, 9 months. And at one point, there was no buying activity, but now that's resuming because I think there's only so long people can hang out. There's still a lot more, from what we see, a lot more smaller buys, but for older um,
mm,
juice. And there's not a lot of, it's quite frankly, until some of this stuff clears out of the market, while the price of new fill has come down, the reality is the price of things already in the barrel that are young has also come down. And sometimes it's cheaper to buy something that's already close to a year old than it is to get the new fill. Although that's kind of balancing out.
interesting. Yeah, it's kind of like I can report from the like tertiary
Yeah, yeah.
sidelines.
No, but you see what,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
but yeah, it was so for the Goldman Sachs thing, it was actually kind of cool because they take you through they team up with Babson College, which I've never heard of before, but
I
it was
have. I'm
really great.
from Massachusetts, so I know. Yeah,
Yeah, and
good business school.
so they take you through like a methodology to like come up with new growth opportunities within your business, and then they teach you how to like vet it and research it and forecast it and basically plan out like everything that you need for it. So we typically operate on a membership basis because we're usually working with spirit entrepreneurs that are just like constantly making like new brands. But one of our clients, we took over their like merch in their online store, and I was looking at the data for that, and I was like, oh my god, it took us to what took them 11 months to do, we did in 3 months, and then we've already doubled the amount of revenue from merch um, this year than we did last year.
So
So I
can
was like,
you
all right,
elaborate a little bit more about what you
Yeah,
did to achieve
yeah,
that? Or,
curious.
wait, sorry, say that again.
no, if you
How
could
did you
elaborate,
do that,
yeah.
Uh,
basically?
yeah, so we took it from the approach of like community building rather than just like, here's a t-shirt, here's a hoodie. Um, and like, I think it's also interesting because it depends on the brand as well. So like if brands already have like a little bit of a following and like a little bit of a community, like this kind of just like throws gas on that fire. So one of the ways, one of the brands has like a secret Facebook group that some fan made like early on in the brand's days. And I think there's like 4,000 people in there now just trying to like hunt down bottles. So we got a little bit of feedback from them of like, like what kind of products are you looking for? And but we also had like certain products that are like for sure everybody's gonna want like t-shirts or trucker hats, stuff like that. So because of the brand part of it, we kind of strategize of like what is a everyday item and what is a like limited release item. And we've gotten it down now. So when we release like a limited edition item, it's sold out in 24 hours. And so we're
Hmm.
like, okay, I mean, I think it's kind of fun.
And these are
Kind of
like
interesting.
brands people know, or
Mhm.
these are, okay.
Well, yeah, now, I guess I won't say it because it's a recorded call, but you can look at our website and probably gather which one it is. Um, but yeah, it's interesting because then like if you're out in public and you're wearing like one of their like hoodies or t-shirts or something like that, then like you can identify somebody else who is also a fan of it. So it kind of like it's been a lot more centered around the community building. And so that the brand can go out and like tell the story. So it's more like supplemental, and then also from the like business angle is I've done a bunch of like vetting of different vendors and different like blank t-shirt brands. I keep using the t-shirt example, but there's a bunch of other things. But so I figured out like which brands are actually high quality, which ones actually fit well, which vendors actually do a really good job at screen printing, which ones communicate really well. So all of the products are then really high quality. So then that kind of like signals to like when somebody buys it, they like are constantly like reminded like, oh, I love this shirt. Like I can wash it 1,000 times and it still feels like the same, or like it's even softer or something like that. So it's been kind of interesting to see like the long-term effects of it that we just like didn't really anticipate. But yeah, I'm excited because that's our like new membership that we're launching.
That's very cool. What about the actual sale of finished goods online? You know, DTC, using a model like that to promote community by purchasing the actual spirit.
So this client is a little bit different. They don't have like online like DTC for like their actual whiskey itself. Also, I think just because like the model that they have some items that are, or like some bottles that are like specifically their brand. It's not single barrel. But I mean, I have other clients too that do sell online, but it's like through a third party.
Mhm.
But I also kind of like, I mean, for what it's worth, it's also kind of like if you wanted to like get around like regulations with like advertising, let's say, like you could easily run an ad for a merch item than you could for like a bottle, you know? So like it kind of like brings someone to your site and then they like explore like what other offerings do you have?
And then
So
they get
it's,
there. Mhm.
yeah.
All right, cool. Anyone want to, any other questions before we leave Charlie and his magic powers of,
What's your website?
I'll put it in the chat here.
all right. Chris, let's check in with Chris.
How's it going?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing all right. And not a lot new on my front. You know, I think as I've mentioned in the past, or I haven't met all of you. I don't think you guys have been on some of the recent ones for me. But we are a small New York gin brand in the process of converting from a contract distilling arrangement to opening up our own distillery in the Hudson Valley area. And we're going through all the approval process right now. And we actually had a pretty good meeting with the town planning board. So hoping to hear back from them soon on whether or not they need us to go through the full application process or going to let us use the property as is under the current use. So we're partnering up with an existing winery where we'll be two distinct businesses operating on the same property. So hopeful that they'll let us go through that way. Working through, I mean, right now what we're doing is trying to find some funding out there through the New York State development agencies and looking at what kind of grants they have available to us. Had a good conversation with them actually this week, and there's some promising grant programs out there, which I was, 6 to 12 months ahead here, given the price of barrels that you're talking about. It'd be nice to be able to bring those in and get our whiskey program going at a discounted price. But we're nothing other than that. I mean, like looking at the marketplace here regionally, to your point about it's starting to look like we've turned a little bit of a corner. I would agree to some extent that the activity level is starting to pick up. So we do a lot of obviously in-store tasting. It's kind of the only way we move product, and they have been incredibly slow for the first 5 months of this year. I mean, like it crawling pace. People who are coming in are either going to the bottom shelf picking up volume discount or just going right to the register and buying behind the cash register. There's not a lot of interest in learning about brands or seeing what's out there, and certainly they're not picking off of the top shelf on a whim. But in the past two tastings that I've done, end of May and early in June, and there's been a change. Activity level has picked up significantly. The amount of product that we moved improved. The interest and all that has really started to improve. So I think that there's some truth to the idea that people are starting to shift their mentality and go back to purchasing. And we've had some restaurants that have started some nice cocktail programs, including our gin in it. And so I think that that's something we've been seeing.
That's excellent. Yeah, that's, I think, in a way, if we think back to early COVID, before we knew anything, when people were panicked, there was a bit of that. Nobody's really interested in learning, but they're running in and grabbing, what they can and get out. But then they got bored. So then it became all of a sudden, 5 months in, 4 months in, it shifted to, okay, now I got time on my hands. It's not as big a crisis as we thought. And we're still not traveling. So let's go treat ourselves to spend a little bit more money on and try something. So I don't know if it's not the same situation, but I think there was a little bit of that panic of, oh my God, how is the sky falling? Really?
Yeah, I think people are still cautious out there, but it's and there's still some level of uncertainty in the conversations that I have with people, but there's definitely been a shift. I don't know if it's exhaustion from, the same old concerns and they're finally just like, I got to do something different. Or there's actually a material shift here. I got an opportunity to listen in to one of the large brand CEOs speak about the marketplace in this must have been in March, and he pointed to the mentality of basically the question was posed: do you think there's a shift in consumer buying habits in terms of less alcohol, moderation, and a shift to abstaining, or do you think it's something else? And I've heard a lot of that conversation going on, and obviously the media loves that conversation, and it's something that's picked up. Obviously, World Health Organization is behind that movement and things like that. But what he pointed to was looking at Canada and their bottle size sales, and he says every economic downturn has been indicated by a shift towards smaller bottle purchases, going behind the counter and buying small bottle purchases. And it's like, that's exactly what we've been seeing in Canada. And that's why we're less concerned about the movement away from alcohol and a shift towards abstaining or moderation and things like that, and more believing that this is an economic movement. And there's been a lot of surveys lately that have shown that this new generation, although you're talking about potentially less consumption, the data doesn't show that in how they talk about alcohol. Like the latest survey that pulled people who were I think from the ages of 16 to 22 or something like that, and whether or not they had thought about alcohol, would purchase alcohol, or have purchased alcohol, was exactly in line with every generation that has ever been in that survey. And so the data didn't really back the mentality that this younger generation isn't drinking. I think what we've seen from the data that we've looked at is that the younger generation that's coming of age basically have done it through COVID, and they did not experience the social aspect of drinking that prior generations have experienced. And so they're coming into that aspect of what alcohol or adult beverage consumption really is at a later age. And maybe they're offsetting some of their purchases with the THC beverages or some other type of alcohol, or stimulant or whatever you want to call it. But they're experiencing the social aspect of all those things much later than previous generations. And I'm hopeful that, and I think that that shift for them may just be something that happens later than previous generations.
Mhm. Yeah, I think consumption is tricky because it is about more THC options. And quite frankly, I think we have to accept that even no alcohol consumption is part of this business now, because it's probably, if you go to look at a menu in any restaurant, they now have a whole section of, no alcohol. They had them for a while, but now it's really there. And that, we have to embrace the fact that what are some of the biggest growth areas for wine and beer? It's in the no alcohol space, but it's still revenue for wine and beer if they're making it. I think Corona is probably Corona and Heineken. They're zero alcohol. I see it all over the place now. And the wine, we've talked about this before, but Dan has to leave. Thank you, Dan. Be in touch. I keep reading about how the growth in the no alc, low alc wine category is far outpacing anything else. But again, that's not changing consumption. That's shifting. It's like shifting to a different flavor. If the wine companies are making de-alcoholized wine, they're still making revenue, selling. So and carry
Yeah,
on those lines,
for sure.
right? What are you seeing in that?
Yeah, the whole low alc, no alc. I mean, everything you just said, the THC, there's just so many choices. And I mean, every time you open Mark Brown or all these articles, it's all about, or even I'm in like drinks business. I get some of the UK ones and things like that. It's just a lot of the younger people are abstaining.
Mhm. Yeah, but
So
again,
then what's going to happen? I mean,
abstaining
like
from alcohol, but they're not abstaining from having something.
still, yeah, right.
So that's
Yeah.
kind of what I'm looking at too.
I would just add like an anecdotal to that. And there's like no broad-based data to this, but with our tastings, the thing that I've seen over the past, I would say year, and we've been doing this since 2020, so I don't have like a extensive history here. But in the past year, I've had more people come up to me to say, I've never tried alcohol and I've never, tried gin, or I've never really tried anything in the alcohol categories at all.
And how old are these people? Like
They're
20s?
young. Yeah, they're like 25-year-olds. They went through that college span and they didn't really drink, and now they're 25 years old and they're like, I'm kind of interested in trying some of this stuff. My parents, I have had cocktails or whatever, and some of my friends do. I've never really had it, and they're
So
out
I'm
there.
not trying to be funny, but what were they doing in college? Smoking
I
weed
was going
or
to say
like
the same thing, but
they had to be
college?
doing something. I mean,
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing is a lot of these people. So if they're 25 years old, going through college was COVID.
Right. So they weren't.
They were
at
locked
home.
up.
They weren't in the
They
dorm. They were.
they were locked up. These people haven't experienced a social environment for where you would typically enjoy these beverages, and or the environment that where you would want to socialize, and they don't see the good side of alcohol consumption, which is the being able to bond with people and have a good time and sit there and maybe let go of some of the stress that you have in your life. They only see the bad side, which we all know. It is a drug, right? We're not here telling people that alcohol consumption in excess is healthy for you. It's in excess, it's bad for you, but so are a lot of things.
Coca-Cola is bad for you in excess.
Right. I mean, water technically is bad for you if you have an excess. You could have water poisoning, but things are that, you know, there's an accepted
No, I-
level, right? Yeah, there you go. You know, so they've only seen the negative aspects of it, you know, the uncle or whoever who may have had alcoholism or whatever. They haven't seen the positives because they were locked up in college when they could have enjoyed a social
You know, it's a really
environment.
good point, because I think about, I've got nephews, my kids are already out of college, but my nephews who during COVID, you know, they were, well, they were just right out of college. So they maybe wasn't the college experience, but they were in the work world, but they were living at home. They weren't living with their buddies, you know, in the city. They like, gonna go home, get out of the city, and for a year,
Yeah.
you know. So it's a little different drinking with your dad than it is a bunch of your buddies.
I love having a drink with my dad.
Yeah, well, you should. Sean is here.
Hey, good morning, Michael.
How are you?
You know, uh 1 month into the new gig and yeah, up to my eyeballs and everything else of trying to figure out who did something where and what was being paid
So
for
what,
there and yeah.
can you bring us up to speed? Can you share a little bit more without revealing any?
Yeah.
I think you can, he's all over social media. Can't you tell it? I mean.
Yeah, I've been a social media person. I don't know. I mean, on the 28th of February, I was let go from Oak Ridge Winery and announced to myself and 11 others, we just were all let go due to some type of financial position at the winery. And it was sad. It was upset because completely vested. I mean, especially when you're up, when you're down and you're not being successful, it's a good reason to be let go. But when you're excelling at 22% up in a down climate structure, it didn't make any sense. But so 31 days later or 61 days later, I landed with a mezcal company that is associated as a incubator brand for Beam Suntory. And so where that is good, it's also interesting because there's a lot of layers. Jumping through hoops. You got to talk to this person first before you can make a play here or a pitch and presentation there or change in price points. It's multiple different layers. It's thicker than an onion and bigger than a watermelon. So it's kind of interesting. Just
But that is like such a great opportunity to just learn how to navigate in a true corporate environment, so
yeah.
that you can take that knowledge. And I mean, I know so many people who have their careers were made on the 3 years that they worked at Diageo, or the
Yeah.
2 years they worked at Bacardi, and then they go off and they can parlay that into experience.
Oh,
My first job was Bacardi, and I learned so much just from being, like you said, like on that environment.
Yeah.
I get it. I got it the first day I met somebody. Yeah. I worked for Gallo. It's like, okay, that tells me all you need to tell me right there.
Yeah. Right.
You know, Gallo guys and gals, it's just funny. They just like to let everyone in the room know I worked for Gallo.
Yeah.
So
He completed the
it's-
10-step program.
yeah, yep. So I went from national accounts west with Oak Ridge to national accounts for the country for Mezcal Amaras. And they've been around for 15 years. They were previously, when they came to the US, they were a part of the Hodling Company, or originally the Anchor Distilling Group back
Mhm.
in the day. And for the last 3 years, they were with Hiram Walker, just going direct to stores and selling directly. They were very successful that route, but then Beam came to them and they signed a multi-year contract for that was fitting a niche inside their portfolio. So now I'm trying to make mezcal in retail, not top shelf, 3 across the SKUs, and doesn't make any sense. Or there's 2 up top and there's 1 down by Jägermeister. You know, like, where are we going to put the mezcal at? Just shove it in the shelf somewhere. Who, no one cares. But when you're accelerating your high percentage rate of increase in the agave sector, and you're not down and you're up and you're present and you're relative, and people in the community and the on-premise world love our brand. They know it, they understand it, they are tried true believers in what we produce. I think we have more gold medals and more double gold medals than any other agave producer.
Mhm.
So when you're looking at the full agave set, we do really well with what we have. So, but yeah,
What are the annual case sales?
we're doing right around, well, we're at almost 20,000, and our, we'll be at, we're at a June or July through June. So next year we're supposed to be close to 33,000.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, you know, with the ebb and flows of being with the hodling and higher walker, there was some definite dips there that were, you know, they were significant, but I think that happens with anyone in transition. I mean, I think there's a lot of things that are going on that are going to be, there's so much going on in California right now. Like Carrie said, it's crazy right now. I had so many friends in the last year that were let go from Southern that it was just, I didn't believe it. And then everything that happened with RNDC is like,
Yeah,
yeah, it's
That
very
was
sad.
crazy.
yeah, yeah. Just bailing out of the market. Crazy that all the brands now that are like, what? What about us?
Well, I
Yeah.
think it's very interesting that Wilson Daniels, 2 days after it was announced, goes over to BBG. So they're a Young's holding company. That mean they knew this for, those negotiations don't happen in 3 days.
Correct.
I don't, that doesn't happen. And they're the first ones to get over with BBG in California. I mean, great for breakthrough. They're actually I think they're one of the best teams in the country. Which is the former wine warehouse people, and a lot of the migrated people from Young's and Southern that came over, but they're really good. They're about educating in brands. They're about building brands. They're not about, you know, selling what's in my portfolio and then on to the next brand, like order takers. So
You're a grandpa?
it's my grandfather's cup. I
I
got,
was like, wait, what?
I'm old enough to be a grandpa. I'm 51 going on 52.
Okay.
You know, I think the biggest thing is that it's gonna be the transition. I don't know if, does RNDC sell the existing business and the contracts like they did with like Southern did with Epic and merge in? Do they fold into, you know, does RNDC distributors get the folding rights to fold into and be a part
I
of
don't know
Breakthrough
I don't know
Beverage?
how that's being handled, but
Yeah.
you're
Or Johnson Brothers.
I think
Yeah.
every state's going to be different.
Well, I meant just for California, the
California.
fold. Like, I think it makes sense both ways. Johnson Brothers' biggest piece of their pie that they're missing is California. And the biggest piece of pie that RNDC was missing is weren't in Nevada.
Right. There's actually yesterday and today's Shanken it's interview with the Southern California leadership team.
Yeah, I didn't read part 2 today. I read the part 1.
Oh, I don't get shaken anymore, but I'm sure is it about the executives that went over to John Anthony?
Well,
we get into that. No,
Okay. All right.
no, it's more a look at the market.
it'll probably show up on Mark Brown Monday.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can afford to. Ryan is hiding behind her name card. Are you there? Ryan, she's there. Oh, I see. She's hanging outside. We don't hear you though.
Hi, sorry about that. I
There
had
you
to go
are.
to a meeting.
Oh,
Hi, how are
hi.
you?
Good. You're in
Hi.
transit.
Yeah, sorry, it's chaos.
So how are you doing? We haven't chatted in a while. You haven't been on the recent calls.
I know we moved offices, blah, 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 blah. So renovating a home, doing all the things at one time. So I didn't want to be doing this, but I wanted to join.
Yeah. Well,
And
it's
I
good to
agree
see
with that.
you.
It's
You
you
look
too.
rested.
Thank you.
You look rested.
Well, that's good because it's not the case.
Yeah.
But I find it so interesting to see. I know everyone's been speaking about the younger generation and what they've been participating in. And with the microdosing and the THC and all the other elements that are out there, it's so interesting because I too have seen and spoken to a lot of individuals that haven't had alcohol. And these are 30-year-olds, that haven't, which is amazing because that's extremely healthy. But again, the flip side is what have you been doing? And all of these new innovative things that are coming out, the make you feel like you had a drink that doesn't, that's full of all these, antioxidants and whatnot. There's a lot of innovative things coming to the market, which I find extremely impressive. So maybe they all were, sitting at home being creators under these, substances that they were choosing to do. But it's been very interesting to see because I've seen a lot of turnover in the alcohol business with just my contacts and moving around, and I've seen a lot of that happening. So it seems like the spirits industry is being forced to obviously get creative and expand their portfolios into some of these products just to meet the need of the market.
Is your company doing demos and tastings on all of this with these new things, or?
I took a step back from sampling because we're building our app so aggressively. So I've been building my platform all year this year for a launch for the brand. We have 3 playbooks that we're launching at first. And the brand ambassador one is the one that's so robust. And we're focusing on adding in that geofencing element so we can capture data, whether you're sampling or not. So clients that come in and they have, the prices have gone up so much for these individuals because of all the other things they can do and all the other influencer offerings that they can take part of with their social media following, which that seems to be what they've all been doing for the past 5 years is, addicted to
Yeah.
their phones to be social,
Mhm.
social that they call it, So it was, brands didn't want to spend the money of what it takes to get a good qualified individual, because they're charging so much for their time. And in their forum groups, they're advocating together of don't take any jobs less than 50 an hour. And that's what they want paid. And then you have, the training piece, the recruiting piece, like all these other elements that go into it, that it becomes a high ticket price for a really qualified individual. And these are in certain markets, right? Like I'm in Las Vegas. So Las Vegas is extremely high because of the competition of what they could do outside of this. The brand ambassador that you will get that's going to work for 30 an hour, it's because they can't go work at the day clubs or anywhere else. And
Yeah.
so it's completely different than Ohio. It's completely different than Nebraska, obviously. But in your high traffic areas where you have, the crowd to get in front of, it's been extremely competitive. So what is the solution for startup brands or brands that don't have big budgets to do these type of activations? And so leaning on tech as much as we can and to put it into obviously your promotions and your brand activations and building brand awareness. So our platform will be done for the brand ambassador side by the first of the year. And it will take all of the elements that you are probably using in brand now into one platform. So it will do everything versus covering 5 of the 7 items that everyone has some of the items, but I've not seen anyone have all of the items that I've been using in my agency for 15 years. So I finally partnered with my developers to launch this one versus tried to outsource a dev team, and now it's all in-house, and we're 24/7 dev, 24/7 marketing agency, and 24/7, in the spirit side. So it's a
Wow.
lot.
Sounds cool. And when there's a beta that you can share.
Yeah, you want to play?
Yeah.
Great, I love it.
Yeah, I think, let's put this group to work.
Well, when I launched the first, 10 years, 15 years ago, when I built this for myself, code was so different. Then, we had Flash websites, not to date ourselves, but we had Flash websites, and we didn't have all the tools that we have now. And 10-year-old code is like, you're just building a hotel on sand at that point. So doing a revamp, but at the time it replaced 6 internal positions at my company, which obviously increases revenue, but it decreases human error. And that's the most important piece. All the paper trailed recaps and hiring and infractions and holding people accountable and trainings. So putting it all in one place really helped my business. And since then, I've always thought someone will come out with something, and platforms like Pop Bookings comes out, but then there's Pinata, and you kind of have to piece all the things together yourself to make it work for your business, versus offer them one solution that they pick and choose what they need, and then they just pay for that. So it could be as robust as you want it to, or if you're, a small local agency that just does this in Orange County, it's also affordable there for what you need. But it has the offerings that might, at the end of the day, make someone think like, wow, I should really have a code of conduct. That's a great idea. And then they have the ability to add a company code of conduct, that everyone can operate off of.
And you've got the content support to be able to help in some of that too. If you have standardized, you've got a lot of boilerplate, I'm sure, that, can easily be modified for somebody's, campaign.
Yeah, and I know what works and doesn't work, and I know how to build a successful agency, because I actually I'm different than everyone in the sense that I meet and interview every single person that comes to, I'm so sorry, is that just dirty? I actually meet every single person that comes through my agency before I put them in front of any brand. So I do an interview, I do a training, and then we train on brand after they're hired, and execution. But that simple, every day I hear, I've never had to meet anyone at an agency before. This is so cool. And it just makes me think like, wow, everyone's just staffing for
scary.
It is. But on the other hand, the brands aren't asking, they're not interviewing their agency either. They're not asking questions about their team.
Right.
They're just kind of taking their word for it. Like, this is what they do. I see these people everywhere, that kind of thing. And it's not great. There's
That's
women.
mind-boggling.
It
is.
Like, the first thing I'm doing is I'm looking over the top of the countertops, listening to what they said, and if they said stuff right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you don't even know what you're talking about. There's one lady, she was setting up her front of her little, the decorations. It took her 45 minutes to get her garland set up straight. I'm like, I don't care about your garland and your tinsel. I want you selling product.
Tell me your 3 bullet points.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then whenever I speak to whenever I'm in the stores and I speak to other talent and I ask them, where's this distillery? How long is it aged? They can't even answer. And I'm not drilling them in a sense of like, oh, I'm going to show this girl, I'm generally trying to feel the market out to see what training has been done and what they know. And it's not even 3 bullet points. So there's so much time that needs to be invested to have a good quality outcome of a sampling promotion. And it all starts with training that individual. And it's just a piece that's looked over. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm super passionate about it because every day I hear, this is so cool. I get to meet someone at the company, and it's just like, that's not cool at all.
Brian, your name is on the people that are working for you. You shouldn't feel not less passionate. You should feel more. And the other thing is, one of the things that we did with our promotion company that we had the girls actually do a video.
For you, or?
Yeah.
Like they were talking to the customer?
Yep.
Great.
And I asked, and it was just on Zoom.
Well, when the
And
app comes out, any details that you like that would be great to put in the platform of a way that they upload videos for a certain purpose. Like,
yeah,
I am here for it. I will build for the community because it's endless what you can do today with tech. It's crazy how much we can just simplify our lives by automating certain elements and giving everyone what they need, you know? And then the flip side is working with them to understand the data. You know, you would think
Oh.
that corporate, and I came from Jim Beam back in the day, so I can't wait to talk to you to see like how different it is. Kathleen still there? Because she's been in the training department for decades upon decades, but teaching them how to use the platform on the back end, the dashboard, understanding that what the data tells us. They're so adamant that this is our target market, and they're missing out on personas that they could be targeting that are actually really enjoying the products.
Mm-hmm. Right, they're tunnel vision.
Well, they're like, no, like White Claw is a great example. We're going for the stroller mom that would love to have a little soft beverage, but can't have 3 beverages, that kind of thing. And there's people up in Wyoming, men snowmobilers, we've talked about this before, drinking more White Claw than I've ever seen depleted in the stroller mom community, So there's definitely areas of opportunity that people are missing out, and they're not investing in certain areas where if you have a low price point to build brand awareness, Wyoming could be great for you and they don't even think about it. But the alcohol consumption, per capita is massive, but they're not looking at the numbers right because they're just looking at population of Wyoming.
Right.
So it leaves a lot of area, you can identify a lot of areas of opportunity with the data.
Now, you mentioned at the outset geofencing, and are you using it to actually track mobile device visits to that particular tasting?
You can do a couple things. Geofencing, you can geofence is Brian on the call?
No.
Okay. You can geofence as little as a 10 by 10 space.
Right.
So you can geofence your footprint at a trade show. You can geofence the liquor aisle, right? So you can geofence in advance to run people to the promotion, to push them there. The sampling is going to be happening at this time. Now you have to have
people who have frequented that store for the last, 60 days or whatever, they can be directed. Yeah. And
yes.
It's funny you mentioned that, because 5 years ago, we were doing some geo campaign experiments. And one thing I did is that I knew what the floor plan of a specific liquor store was. So we did the bourbon section and the vodka section just to see, and we were able to see, what time of day, how much time people spent, and you had to walk through the bourbon section to get to the vodka. So, but we could also tell who stopped and who didn't, how many people stopped, and how many people didn't. But it was fascinating. Literally.
And you can also geofence. Excuse me. You can also geofence during the promotion to see if the data matches the recap data, right? Or you can geofence in lieu of a promotion. If you have some sort of rebate that's happening and you don't, the rebate's obviously going to take $5 into the profit or whatever the rebate may be. So it really cuts into the margin when you start to do a promotion, and your break even point is then at that point extremely high, just to break even on what you would have to do in sales. So sometimes geofencing comes in play when you can't be at a certain area and you can still be there. So the data is the big piece. And then I find in this industry specifically, the people aren't looking at it. Unless you schedule a call and go over it with them, they are not looking at the data. They're just on to the next thing. So it's unfortunate.
You need to make it
is there a portal that
a pretty graphic that they can't help miss?
Oh, I told the dev team, we need pictures. We need a dashboard with graphs, photos, pie charts, because
arrows up and down.
A thumbs up, like had some emojis, like it was good.
Not too many numbers, just a lot of big numbers and
And
direct.
then something else that App will do is it's going to allow each other to rate one another. So the brands can rate the brand ambassadors. So they have, just like Uber, where they have an ongoing rating of their on time, timeliness, their sales goals and certain aspects that come into play that will live on their profile to hopefully hold them more accountable as independent entrepreneur, brand ambassadors that are out there.
And tracking the actual sales. Are you going to tie into POS systems, or what's your vision for that?
That can be tricky. Liability comes to mind first and foremost, because if their POS system gets hacked and they tried to say it came from, so that'll be on the dev team. It's a good idea. I'll definitely throw it on the docket to see, because you can't trust their sales, unless there's a receipt involved.
Right. Yeah.
But it's hard to capture full sales, because the product you can, when you choose your location during a sampling, oftentimes you want to be on the high traffic side. So I want to be by the door. I want to be at the big tables. Like, I want to be where the highest traffic is, but yet product could, the product could be, especially Total Wine, the product could be, 17 rows over and in a different location that they end up buying, or they take a bottle because they feel pressure and then they put it back elsewhere. So the true sales come from the register.
Yeah, either sales and obviously inventory, tying into inventory. I know a while back we were digging into an app, Bartender, which was about inventory management and tracking actual use of product. It would literally help measure every bottle. It was more for on-prem, but what's left in the bottle, how many drinks were poured, and all that kind of stuff, which was pretty fascinating data. And it was really about tying in with the inventory systems and tying in with reordering. So it would trigger a notification that you need to forecast. We need to get 20 more cases of this next month.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty cool.
Yeah, and the new scales that are out they've been around a while, but they just keep getting better and better. But the inventory scales, where you just put the bottle on the scale.
Yeah.
God, I wish I had that when I had a bar.
Right. Yeah.
The whole eyeing of the bottle, you couldn't really count on people to get that right.
Yeah.
Well, I think now it's all done on. Now they have AI app, don't they, Michael?
I haven't really dug into them, but I have to imagine that they do.
Yeah, it's all you do is you put the bottle in the picture frame with a UPC code if it has one, or the photo.
Yeah.
It sees the line and it takes it for you. Or you can put your finger where the line is if it's a dark bottle, and it tells you how much is left.
That was in the other. I didn't think of it as AI as much as just it is based on the SKU, what the volume should be, and it knows what it is at each different increment, like how many, or if they're over pouring.
Yeah, and it's like instant. They're like, oh, who was working the most shifts this week, and why did they give so much of the scotch away for free? Yeah. That's why I think when you claim tips, and it's done through a credit card, and you see a big tipper on a small tab, you're like, oh, yeah. There you go. What
They
were they
drank for
thinking?
free.
Oh.
And then you see
two.
you see that same visitor every day of the week.
Guilty.
Yeah.
Guilty. I have my favorite haunt, and I always get something that for nothing, and I always leave a bigger tip.
Yeah.
But
That's how it works.
That's right. All right, so let's see, what other topics can we address as we head into the dog days of summer?
Have you spoken about the tariffs and what's going to be happening going both ways at all?
We have spent a lot of time talking about tariffs over the past 2 months. I think we're exhausted on tariffs right now.
Okay, I'll rewatch. I'll watch the video.
No, until we know what's sticking and not sticking. it's hard to know, but it's been, well, I think the tariff issue has just been, it paralyzed so many people. I mean, especially anyone who's dealing with export. Now then it kind of, oh, whoop, never mind. You know,
Yeah, but a lot of those containers were already on the water, and then it's just been a nightmare.
yeah. When we had that conversation, and Stephen, we did a special tariff trauma about a ago. But Stephen Gould was really helpful. He, you know,
Yes, he really was.
very good insights about workarounds. But it was an issue at that point. We were at the height of, you know, the China standoff and the idea of getting things from China. Now, my son, who is not in the spirits business, but is in the renewable energy space and had equipment in China that was or paid for by a customer, that they were panicking over how we're going to get it. And then, 2 days later,
Like Vanessa's still.
so then it's like, let's go, let's get, and then they were putting out pitches saying, we have 60 days, put your orders in now. So we can get them.
I wonder if Vanessa got her still, because remember she was like on the fence
I have not heard.
Same time.
Maybe that's why she's not here, because she got her still and she's busy putting it together. That could be it. We'll have to reach out and find out.
Well, we know she hasn't been putting it through the roof because it's been raining in New York for what, 30, 40, 50 days straight? I don't know.
I know, it's pretty nuts.
Yeah.
Yep.
And cold. I think they got sun a couple of days ago.
I don't know. All right. Well, I think we are going to wrap this up. I'm just looking at my calendar to figure out what we're going to do in July, because July 4th is a Friday. So we're not going to do it on July 4th.
No. You'd be talking to yourself probably.
Yeah. And then where am I here?
Well, hopefully he's not going to be wearing red, white, and blue and sipping on a nice cold beer in the middle of a beach. I mean, that'd be.
I will actually
show up with your patriotism.
I will actually. If we did it on July 4th, I would actually be up on the rocks of the ocean in Massachusetts at a official New England clam bake.
Oh, nice.
Oh.
With lobsters and steamers.
We should definitely have the meeting there.
Yeah, so that's where I will be.
Yeah, all expenses paid on Michael.
Well, it's my brother's neighborhood. We go up there.
You might want to clear that with your brother first.
That's right. So if we do, I invite everyone to that. Now, so I think we're going to look at July 11th, which might be tricky.
Okay.
Opinion? Would you rather do July 11th, or we're not doing the 4th?
No.
I know that.
Yeah, the 11th.
11th. Let's go for it.
I mean, people are going to have conflicts no matter which day you pick.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
4th, everyone has a conflict. So if
I'll
we
be
go too late in
somewhere.
the month, then we'll be having to see each other too close together.
That's true.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah. All right. Let's do that. All right. Well, thanks everybody.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wishing all good continued growth and success, and navigating through uncharted waters.
Have
Yeah.
a safe holiday, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Good luck,
Bye.
Ryan.
Thank
weekend.
you.
Congratulations, Sean.
Thanks, Carrie. I appreciate it.